about the 1970s that this wheat went worldwide. In 1969, Dr. Norman Bulag got a Nobel Prize for his hybridised wheat. So by the 1990s, in Australia, in New Zealand, every cereal, every bread, every cake, every pie, every pizza, every donut, every biscuit, every pasta, what's it made out of? The hybridised wheat. Now, what happened with this hybridised wheat? I'll just wipe that off. What happened with this hybridised wheat? What was never addressed was the effect on the human body, the effect on the gut. And what this hybridised wheat produced was a type of starch. It's called amylopectin. Amylopectin A is the starch found in this hybridised wheat. Now, amylopectin A gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, and you've always get a corresponding dump. Amylopectin B is what's found in bananas and potatoes. And amylopectin B, it gets it up fairly high, not as high, and so you get a drop too, but not as low. You see that? Amylopectin C is what is found in chickpeas, lima beans, legumes, and it gets a nice steady rise and steady drop. Now, because of that amylopectin A, it has a very high reading on the glycemic index. Are you familiar with the glycemic index? Because the glycemic index of foods is how quickly the food breaks down to glucose in the blood. So your baseline for glycemic index is 55. So anything below 55 is low. Anything above 55 is high. Let me give you an illustration. Cherries are 26. In fact, in most of the low-carb books, they advocate the only fruit to eat is blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, cherries, because they're very low on the glycemic index. Sugar, whether it be molasses, whether it be brown, whether it be raw, whether it be white, it has a glycemic index of 59, and we're not surprised. The refined wheat, so that would be white bread, white cereals, cakes made out of white flour, 69. Wow. So that white bread products is higher than sugar. I'm glad you're sitting down because the next information is shocking. Wholemeal. So wholemeal wheat. So that's wholemeal bread, wholemeal pasta, 72. How could that be? How could wholemeal bread get the blood sugar level up quicker and higher than white bread? Well, because it's not refined, it has more of the amylopectin A in it. Can you see that? One lady said, "Are you saying white bread's better than wholemeal?" No. No, I'm not. The problem is the wheat. I presented this one day at our health retreat, and a lady began to cry. I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I'm type 2 diabetic. I was diagnosed 2 years ago." She said, "I do everything they tell me. I have wholemeal bread, wholemeal cereal, wholemeal pasta. And every 6 months I visit the doctor and he puts me on more insulin." What's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. She said, "I'm crying tears of frustration because I do everything that they tell me and I'm getting worse." She said, "I'm crying tears of joy right now because you have just solved the problem." Now, if you want to pursue this a little bit more, there's a book called Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis. And he will explain this issue in detail. Why is his book called Wheat Belly? Because this blood sugar level that goes up so high under the effect of the amylopectin A in this hybridized wheat, very quickly the body's got to do something with that. And what does it do with it? Stores it as fat. He said this amylopectin A, once the blood sugar drops because of the high insulin release, it gets stored on the internal organs, pushing the belly out. But not only that, it's a type of visceral fat that gets stored on the belly. So you got a double whammy of pushing it out. In his book Wheat Belly, Dr. William Davis must say the term wheat belly nearly every page. He has decades of clinical practice up his sleeve. Hundreds of his patients have conquered diabetes and weight gain through dropping of the wheat. Is it that simple? Well, it's part of the equation. But it solves the puzzle, because Aussies, New Zealanders have been eating sugar for a long time, and sugar doesn't get off the hook. Sugar certainly is a big contributing factor, but something has caused this explosion, and it is the hybridized wheat. There is also a problem with the gluten, because it's produced an incredibly complex gluten. No wonder we have so much gluten intolerance today. You look at the timeline worldwide in the 70s, by the 1990s, all of those foods are made out of this hybridized wheat. When did gluten intolerance appear? Going into the 2000s, when Aussies are starting to actually show the results of this wheat. But you've not only got that, you've got the problem of babies being fed starch too young before they've got their molars to be able to deal with it. Do you know 100 years ago, babies weren't given food? And the first teeth are 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom, and they're called milk teeth, because that's all babies should have. Milk. Then the molars appear where they grind. And when the grinding molars come through, then ptyalin is released in the mouth. And ptyalin is the amylase enzyme that breaks down starch. So with my babies, I gave them no starch until the molars were through. That can be 20 months, even to 2 years. And what are mothers told to give their babies in the first 4-6 months of life? Pharax, yeah, pure starch. That's setting up the gluten intolerance. It's setting up gut problems. We're going to go back to the old ways. So many little bits and pieces come together to make us who we are. But the good news is we live in an incredible body that has an amazing ability to heal itself when you give it the right conditions. Last night I told you the story of a couple of people who'd conquered their eczema by stopping the wheat, conquering irritable bowel by stopping the wheat. So many symptoms. I could have an answering service on my phone. Stop the wheat, dairy, refined sugar. Next, stop the wheat, dairy. Is it that simple? Well, it's not quite that simple, but it is a large part of it. You can eat a slice of bread and it'll be out of your body in 24 hours, but the effect can remain for up to 6 weeks, 2 months. And if someone says, well, I've been doing it for 6 weeks and I'm not getting the results, I say, well, do you have any mold exposure or chemical exposure? They can be exacerbating the problem. That's why the detective hat always must go on to find out why these things are so. Newton's third law of motion: to every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction. Now, to allow you to fully digest what I've just presented, because to some it may be quite shocking news. It was certainly quite shocking news when I first looked at it. But I've seen such amazing results